Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to the International Virtual Conference, Translation and Writing as Mosaic, that is held as the sixth conference in a series of theories and realities in translation and writing. So in this conference, my presentation is about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, titled One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in multiple directions, circulation through the act of translation. And I am Assistant Professor Naciye SAÐLAM at the Department of Translation and Interpreting Studies at Fırat University. Let me introduce my outline first. I will be starting with sociology of translation and the concept of mosaic, the parallelism between the two, and move on to Kenneth Kesey and his well-known, really widespread book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and its novel, play, and movie forms in original language English. Then I will move on to interlingual translation. The translation of the English novel into Turkish in 1976 and other editions, and also the English play into the translation, interlingual translation of the English original language into Turkish, and regarding the movie, the subtitles. I will only touch up on this movie subtitles as well, and I will have my concluding remarks. The aim of this presentation is to show the mosaic structure within the circulation of the work One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest via its novel, play, and movie forms, as well as the circulation of the products through translation act. And I will be using paratext by Janet. First, let me define what paratext we mean. The literary and printerly conventions that mediate between the world of publishing and the world of the text. And Janet categorizes these paratexts into two as peritexts and epitexts. While peritexts are the ones that mediate the book to the reader inside the book, such as titles and subtitles, pseudonyms, forewords, dedications, epigraphs, prefaces, intertitles, notes, epilogues, and afterwards. We can also have epitexts like interviews with the publishers or news about this specific book. And epitexts are, in this sense, the mediators that are outside the book. And let's start with the sociology of translation. Regarding the sociology of translation, if we think within the framework of sociology of translation, translation practice is beyond an act of transferring an element into another setting. It's more of a creative process reshaped with the strategies of the agents. So the strategies of agents are crucial here. And we can point to the emergence of sociology of translation to 1980s and the theorists that are influential in sociology of translation are mostly Bruno Latour, Niklas Luhmann, and Pierre Bourdieu. And action network theory of Bruno Latour and systems theory of Niklas Luhmann and field theory of Pierre Bourdieu, but also other concepts by Bourdieu are applied to the translation act, and therefore sociology of translation is born. And regarding Pierre Bourdieu, scholars such as Daniel Simeone, Jean-Marc Guanvik, Moria Inglieri, Raghavet Salasheffi, and Michiel Wolf approached translation phenomenon with the key concepts developed by Pierre Bourdieu. And we can say that we will be moving towards sociology of translation from the branch of Pierre Bourdieu's sociological tools and their application into translation practice. And the dynamics of translation depends on the structure of the space of reception and on the way in which relevant intermediaries, such as translators, critics, agents, publishers, shape social demand. So it's quite important. And in our case, we can also add directors' performance to these intermediaries. And translator agents. So here we need to take into account the agents and also the factors such as translator agents, performance, habitus of agents, strategies, social, cultural, and economic dynamics in which translation is created and also performed. And I will be using the concepts of Pierre Bourdieu, such as field, circulation, capital, and especially symbolic capital, agents, dominance versus transformative forces. So the agents here are divided into two that I will be explaining, and with parallel this dominant and transformative sides, large scale and restricted scale production. I would like to start with the definition of field and agents and the main concepts with a quotation by Bourdieu. He says, I would say that literary field is a force field as well as a field of struggles which aim at transforming or maintaining the established relational forces. Each of the agents commits the force, that is capital, that he has acquired through previous struggles to the strategies that depend for their general direction on his position in the power struggle, that is, on his specific capital. So here the struggle is between the dominant side that is trying to keep the dominant structure and the transformative side aiming at a change at the system. So we need to say that struggles are inevitable in order to attain legitimate symbolic violence, that is, to have the right to determine what is right and what is wrong in the respective field. So within these struggles, we need to emphasize these two sides that are trying to change the system and trying to keep this autonomy. Actors, in our case translators, performance directors, are inclined to take certain decisions rather than others through their socially constituted habitus. And by using the capital they have, the actors in the field strive for a name that is elusio within the struggles in the field. And within the field, while dominants practice strategies in order to maintain autonomy, since it's desirable according to their elusio, dominated lay claim for a change in the system by practicing subversive and transformative strategies. And parallel with this, large-scale production aims an increase in their economic capital and maintaining this capital and autonomy, while restricted scale production is in search for symbolic gains. So in parallel with dominance and dominated, while dominants are mostly practicing strategies of large-scale production in the literary field, let's say, while the dominated ones are trying to change the system and using restricted scale production, aiming maybe less people, but trying to gain symbolic capital here rather than economic capital. And the elusio in our literary field can be defined as legitimacy. So while it's a power, legitimate power in a field, in our literary field, it's legitimacy, that is recognition in the field. And this, in the social conditions of the international circulation of ideas, an article that is written by Pierre Bourdieu and have direct references to the Translation Act, he divides or categorizes the circulation of the text under three, actually. And before that, he mentions that the problem about the misunderstanding about the translation is that texts are circulating without their contexts. And these three categorizations are the phases that explain the products coming into a target language. And in the selection process, we need to ask questions such as what is to be translated, what is to be published, who it will be translated by, and who will publish it. In other words, who are the discoverers and what is their interest in doing so? And in the second one, labeling and classification, is in which the work of art gets a label that it hasn't had before. And here, what forms of labels inserted on the work and with which aims are the questions that we need to ask here. And especially about this specific stage, we will be having the book covers, and Bourdieu has a direct reference here, and he says the cover of the book acts as a sort of brand name. And in the reception process, readers or in our case, audiences perceive the work in different ways according to the different field of production. So the concept of mosaic, let's first define the mosaic concept, and then see the parallelism. Mosaic is the art of creating images with an assemblage of small pieces of colored glass, stone, or other materials. Small pieces, normally roughly cubic or stone or glass of different colors, known as tesserae, are used to create a pattern or a picture. So parallel between the concept of mosaic and translation can be regarded as a multi-layer, multi-dimensional, multi-modeled structure of translation, aiming at a harmony out of assemblage of different origin materials by creating or recreating a pattern in a target environment. So who is Ken Kesey? Ken Kesey is mostly coined with counterculture and carrying the spirit of 1960s and searching for a cultural change. So here in Bourdieu's terms, we can say that he is mostly on the transformative side or dominated side that is trying to change the system. And then after attempting acting, he started writing. And he started writing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when he was working as a night shift job in a mental hospital, and influenced or inspired by the patients in the ward, but also the psychedelic substances that he's using. And One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So first we have the novel. And Ken Kesey wrote this novel first in 1962. Then, a year later, it was adapted to stage, and a play form has appeared by Dale Wasserman. And after that, in 1975, it was adapted into a movie form, and Jack Nicholson actually performed it, and it has a big hit and won 5 Academy Awards. So the main storyline is about the McMurphy, who is charged by raping a child, fakes having a mental problem to stay in a psychiatric ward instead of a prison work, let's say. By questioning the oppressive rules of the ward and awakening patients, he experiences a clash with the nurse Richard, since he poses threat to big nurse tyranny. He ends up losing his mental health after having an electroshock. Actually, in Bourdieu's terms, maybe we can say that the novel tells the story of a revolt against the legitimate power. And the book has been investigated from many aspects, but I need to skip it due to the time restrictions. As we have seen, the novel has many editions. And when we move on to play, we see that in 1962, it was first performed by Broadway. And this picture is the picture of this performance. And in 1971, with Off-Broadway and also 82, Royal Exchange in Manchester, that's also a big hit with this playbill, you can see. And in 2001, it was again brought to Broadway and won many awards like Tony Award, Other Critics Circle Award, Drama League Award. And in 2004, with Edinburgh Fringe Festival, it also had hit a box office and has been performed for 20 weeks, which is a really long period. And in 2018, Afterhours Theatre Company has performed immersive performance that is really a kind of another adaptation from this play, actually. And in 2019, English Theatre Frankfurt also has another adaptation here I wanted to show you, but due to the time regulation, I need to skip this. So in the first level, about the intersemiotic translation from novel into play, we can say that this form constitutes the first layer in translation. And in selection process, we see Dale Wasserman as the first agent here. And about labeling, due to the Broadway and Royal Exchange theaters and also off-Broadways and 20 weeks duration, we see that it has a really prestigious labeling. And about receptions, we see that with immersive performances and more adaptations of the play, I mean, from novel into play, but also the play's adaptations has another layer here. And I would like to remind the quote of Bourdieu here: the sense and the function of a foreign word is not determined simply by a field of origin, but in at least equal proportion by the field of reception. So we see that in the field of reception, with the adaptations, immersive performances, it gains another layer. And here we see the function changes in each level, but especially in reception process with immersive performances and adaptations. And because the adaptations brings the work into a more deeper level by recreating and reconstructing. About the movie form, as we already said that it was adapted to film by Milos Forman, and McMurphy performed Jack Nicholson, and the movie won 5 Academy Awards altogether as Best Picture, Best Actor, Actress, Director, and Screenplay. So in the second level, intersemiotic translation from novel into movie, in the selection process, we see another important figure here, who is Michael Douglas, who has the academic and cultural capital, and who had read the text even before it published, and bought this stage and screen rights, actually. But it took 10 years to direct the movie and put it onto stage. So another important agent here is Milos Forman, the director. And about labeling, we see the 5 Academy Awards. That is a really exceptional thing in film studies. And also performance of Jack Nicholson and his symbolic capital is another really important factor here. But also in the academic environment, there is a criticism that movie distorts the original soul by omitting surrealist perspective, versatile, mythic quality, multidimensional psychological growth, and also by changing the point of view and thinning the characters. So in this, there is another adaptation, and in this level, maybe it can also be further discussed in my paper, let's say. And in the reception process, we see that in IMDb, very well known, one of the most famous film site, it has a really good mark, let's say. And when we move on to interlingual translation, in the novel, the movie, and play forms, we have actors and the reasons for labeling. So interlingual translation, we see that it was published by many different publishers and with different translations. But here I would like to again remind the cover of the book acts as a sort of brand name here. So we will have a look at these brand names. And another quote by Bourdieu pays our way here. Anyone who appropriates an author becomes the person who introduces that author to another country, inevitably has some ulterior motive. It may be sublime or sublimated, but it should be revealed as it is clearly a determining factor in what is being done. So what could be the motive with which strategies? So in Hürriye İncelik, for example, we see Nicolas Cage here again, Jack Nicholson we see. And actually there is a hint here because since he gets to the mental hospital because he raped a child, maybe there is an implication here to this fact actually. And on the back page of the book, we see a kind of rebellion to the society, let's say. Here, yaşadığınız şeylere uyuşabiliyor musunuz? Dirençsizliklerden, seksin, politikanın biçimlendirdiği gerçeğin, bu roman biçimlendirdiği gerçeği, bu roman çanlar çalarcasına duyurmaya çalışıyor. So there is a kind of rebellious atmosphere here. And in 1970s, actually, especially in these times, we know that the subversive strategies, since there is a really strict regulations about the politics, the subversive strategies of the publishers are mostly done through a kind of sexism or let's say eroticism. And in the preface, it's also a little bit, let's say, apparent that there is an information about Kenneth Kesey and also the winning of Oscars. Yes. And in Altın Kitaplar, we have another similar approach here. Although we see maybe a kind of screenshot from the movie or play, we see another girl here, a woman, a naked woman, again, as an implication for eroticism with the propaganda that sex sells. And here also, in this one, we have seen another outsider attitude of Kenneth Kesey is mentioned, yalnızlıkla örülü, uyuşturucu maddelerle sisli. And also, again, mentionings of the Oscars. An Aryan publisher. In this one, maybe we can see that through 2000s, there is a more tendency to the transformative strategy of Kenneth Kesey in this book. But in the book cover, we see again Jack Nicholson and his symbolic capital in translating. And also with Turkuaz Kitap in 2000, there is again a similar approach with Jack Nicholson here again, and under the on the back cover we still see a rebellious tone. And this is the last one in 2018 with another translation by Duygu Akın, and it is more let's say to a restricted scale production, but it also gives a more detailed information about Kenneth Kesey, the book, the novel, and the play forms. There is almost a 20-page introduction into the novel itself. So, in selection process, who translate what? We see Aziz Üstel, a real well-known figure in literary field, but also Duygu Akın as well, and the publishers like Altın Kitaplar, Hürriye Yayın, till 2018 to Nemesis Kitap. And according to labeling, it's certain that the symbolic capital of Jack Nicholson was a determining factor in selecting this specific novel for translating into Turkish, especially by different publishers. The book has been labeled with rebellion on the one side and popularity on the other. While in the beginning, around 1970s, the book was labeled with eroticism, later publications refer to the transformative strategy of the book. And in the reception process, we see second and third editions with different publishers. And about the movie, I would like to skip it since I already exceeded the time. And the play and the selection, we will ask questions and who selected this play. And we learned that Bilge Kovoğlu, who runs the Bakraj Art Gallery here, goes to America and read it, and then she decides to translate it herself. And the translation performed by Ankara State Theatre and was won Best Translator Award by Ankara Art Council. So each theatre company selected this specific play for performing. Ankara State Theatre, Antalya State Theatre, Kocaeli Belediyesi State, again City Theatre, Sadri Alışık Theatre Company, but also many university theatre groups as well. And also it has received again awards, Türkçe Katkı Ödülü, and also
yardımcı rolde en iyi başarılı erkek oyuncu. And we see that with this labeling in Turkish art field, especially with Oktar Kaynarca, it was labeled with him, and his symbolic capital again plays another important dimension here. And the reception, what sort of reception these performances envisage. Although the intention of the book is the revolt against the legitimate power, it becomes a large-scale production, and parallel with the intended circulation in the source language environment, by gaining popularity, the play moved towards large-scale production. And I just wanted to give quite quick concluding remarks. The act of translation refers to the multidimensional process in which each component is forming a relationship with another, drawing a parallelism with the mosaic structure. Just like a mosaic, the end product, although it may seem one from the outside, is the harmonious whole of the components, such as internal features of the text, form and formations and transformations of the text, translators, publishers, directors, actors, and performers as agents shaping the circulation of the text, the structure of the field and the struggle in the field, and the struggle in the field in which different forms of translation takes place. Although the main aim of the author can be regarded as a transformative strategy, aiming at a change in the literary or cultural field, the book became a product of large-scale production rather than the restricted scale, aiming at a change in the system. So these are my references, and I would like to thank you all for listening.